And hello, welcome to codeLive. Today, we are going to be talking about custom invocable actions to use with Flow. We will be writing some Apex, and those Apex methods will be called from a flow. Let's see how can we perform this and how can we integrate these two worlds. So remember, Flow let us pretty much solve problems using low code or no code tools. Pretty much we are drag and drop boxes and logic into a Flow builder. And with custom actions, we will be able to integrate pro code with Apex business logic into our flows. Let me share my screen and I will show you what we'll be doing today. But before that, my name is Julian Duque. I'm a principal developer advocate here at Salesforce, and this is codeLive, where we perform live coding live for you. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm seeing a lot of folks in the chat right now interacting. Thank you very much for joining. Let us know where are you joining from. Please, I'm currently in Tampa Bay, Florida, but I want to read in the chat. If I am looking this way, it's because the chat is right here. So please let me know where are you joining from, and I will be able to say hi to you. Okay, so I was researching about this Apex GraphQL client, which it seems somebody from the community is working on one. So if you look for Apex GraphQL on Google, you will find the GitHub repository. This person published a package, and maybe you will find what you are looking for there. Before we start, remember, visit the developer.salesforce.com website where you can find all the new information we are releasing for you. Blog posts, events, videos, podcasts, everything is going to be here in the developer website. Also, the documentation we are going to be reviewing today. Take a look at the Learn More campaign that we released, showing you and showcasing the new features for Spring 23. If you scroll the website here on the video section, we have the developer preview for Release Readiness Live. We have a lot of different product managers and developer advocates showing you what's new with the new release of Salesforce. And also there are like some other videos that we produce for you. Quick takes and different blog posts, and also events that are going to happen recently. For example, the codeLives. I told you initially that next week I will be doing a asynchronous JavaScript codeLive where I will be teaching you how to do promises, async await, event management in JavaScript, and everything using Lightning Web Components examples. Okay. Let me transition to the website. Remember, developer.salesforce.com. And I was showing you the developer preview video and the other videos that we release for you, and the different blog posts, podcasts, and events that you can find on the website. I wasn't sharing my screen somehow, so now you are seeing what I'm seeing. What are we going to do today is learn about invocable actions. Pretty much an invocable action is an Apex method that I can call from the REST API. So if we are using the Salesforce REST API, I will be able to execute these actions. We have both standard actions and custom actions. Standard actions are those that already come with my Salesforce installation. Depending on the license we are using or the different products we are using, I may have more or less of these default actions. But the power is that we are able to build custom actions. Our own logic can be also deployed to Salesforce. And this is what we are going to be learning today. For that, we will rely on an annotation in Apex called the invocable method and another annotation which is the invocable variable. So far, I'm just showing you the documentation. These resources are going to be shared at the end on the description of the video so you can read through all of these different resources. Before we start implementing, let me go to my terminal, and I will be performing a couple of requests to the API to see what actions do I have available to use on flows. If you have seen codeLive before, I implemented a plugin for the Salesforce CLI that helps me simplify REST API requests. I'm going to be using this one, but you can use Postman, you can use Coral or Workbench if that's what you use to query the REST API. So I have the REST API here. I'm going to be performing a query to the /actions route, and I am authenticated into the flow invocations Scratch org. This is the Scratch org we are going to be using for our project. I have an empty project without anything, and I have an empty Scratch org that I just created for this project. And here is where I'm going to be deploying my custom actions. I'm checking the chat. Awesome. Mr. Panera from Germany, Ankur from Chandigarh, Pedro Conde from Portugal. Oh, nice. A10 from Lake Worth, Florida, just right here. Pretty close from me. Pankaj from India. Thank you very much for joining to this codeLive. Okay. So I'm performing this API request to the /actions endpoint. If you go to the documentation, get invocable actions, here, this is the endpoint we are calling, and it will give me the list of the different actions I have, the standard or custom. If I go and query custom, let me take a look at custom. Right now, these are the different custom actions that I can deploy. External services, quick actions, send notification actions, outbound message, flow, Apex, or email alert. We will be deploying custom Apex actions. So far, we don't have any. If you see, the result from the API is empty, so we don't have any custom action deployed in our org. If we take a look at the standard actions, let me query the standard actions. I have multiple. This comes already with Salesforce. For example, authorize payment, generate a knowledge feedback log, generate work plans and delete work plans. So these are like pieces of business logics that are on a specific class that you can call from a flow. Normally, within flows, you can get records, perform certain operations on records, but for complex operations, you will need to have an action. And this is what we are going to be doing today. How can we write our first custom action? What do we need to have in mind? And how can we use it? Let's go to my Scratch org, and let's create a new flow. So I'm going to create a new flow. I'm on setup, flows. I'm creating a new flow. This new flow, to simplify things, is going to be a screen flow. Screen flow is a flow that lets me add screens for user interaction, and I will be able to run the flow, fill out the information on these screens, and call the different actions we are going to be creating today. So screen flow. Let's create a screen flow. Awesome. And now let's create a custom action that performs a hello world operation. This is going to be super simple. I know with flow you can do it, but I will overcomplicate things and create a custom action for the hello world so we understand how to connect the flow with an Apex class. I see more people. Joaquin from Argentina. Fantastic. Thank you, Joaquin, for joining. Pankaj, you don't want to use an unmanaged package. Do we have another way? I don't know if we have an official way. I don't think so. I know we are working on the LWC wide adapter to use from LWC, but not from Apex. Okay, so let's create our screen flow. This is going to be a screen. Let's say hello, or let's greeting our user. It's going to be our screen, and let's have an input field of type text. Enter your name, and this is required, and the default value we can assign it to a variable. So let's create a variable, and this is a variable called name of type text. Perfect. We have a screen. If we save this, let me call this flow testing custom actions. If we run the flow, it will you have a input type text to enter our name. We will pass this input parameter into the custom action, and we will be doing something with the custom action. Okay, so let's write our first custom action. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, create a new Apex class. This is going to be called Hello World Action. Very simple. And now let's take a look at the rules we need to follow to create custom actions in Apex. First, the class needs to be either public or global, which right now we have a public class. Second, we can only have one invocable method in our class. Only one. We cannot have multiple. Only one invocable method in our class. This invocable method needs to be also public, static, and needs to return a list of objects and needs to have an input of a list of objects. Those are the rules for our custom invocable method. So let's create a public static list. We are going to return a list of strings. My method is called sayHello, and it receives a list of strings. Right now I'm writing the very basic invocable method. We are receiving and returning a list because these methods can be called on a bulkify form. So we will need to be able to operate over all of the inputs and perform the operations that we wanna perform. Let me create another method here. This can be private, also static. It will return a string, and let's call it generate greeting, and it will receive a input. And what we will be returning is hello and the input. Right now, this is the business logic. The business logic is going to perform a transformation of the data I am entering to this class and then returning a greeting. Last but not least, I will need to create a list of what I call the results that I'm going to return to my flow. This is a list of strings. And let's iterate over the inputs. And let's add the result of generate greetings and return the results. So far, I have a method that I can call from a flow that receives a input. That input is transformed to have some sort of salutation. And then I can get that result back into the flow and show it on the screen. The last thing that I need to do is to expose this method as an invocable method, so Flow can know this is something Flow can execute. So let's use the invocable method annotation, and we can have some properties, for example, the label, to explain or show in the interface what this invocable method does. For example, say hello, and it can have a description. It says hello to the user. Let me take a look at the chat. Why only one invocable method? Because that's the way Flow has to discover the methods. And it's a limitation that you will find to be able to invoke the action from Apex. If you take a look at the documentation with the invocable method annotation, you will see that there are like some other different rules that you will need to follow. The invocable method must be static and public or global, and its class must be an outer class. So it is available for the flow, so it can take a look at what it's going to be executing. Only one method in a class can have the invocable method annotation, and other annotations cannot be used with the invocable method annotation. So it's the only annotation that you can add to that specific method. And in regards of the inputs and outputs, always you will have a list. But this list can have either a primitive data type, like a string, but object is not supported. So you will need to specify the data type instead of having the generic object. You can have a list of an S object, like a Salesforce object. It could be account, it could be contacts, or it could be a custom object that you created. And you can have also a list of the generic S object type, or a list of lists, depending on how you are working with the invocable method. And the same for the return. You will need to have either a list of primitives, a list of S objects, or a list of the generic S object type. Perfect. Let's take a look at the code. This looks good. Now we are ready to deploy. So let's deploy this. Sf deploy, no, sf metadata deploy preview. Let me preview and see if everything is right. To the flow invocations scratch org. I'm checking. Awesome. I have the hello world action ready to deploy. Now let's remove the preview. And I can push this class into my org, and I will be able to call it from Flow. Let me see. No issues. No issues at all. Let me execute the custom Apex API REST request. And now we see that the custom action is deployed. So now I have a hello world action, which is an Apex action that I can use either from the API or from Flow. Santanu, Julian, Salesforce has made several major changes in Flow since winter 21 till spring 23. Could you please create one video for all of these? It will really help. Interesting. I will need to talk about with the Flow product managers to gather all of the different features that they have had, or take a look at the previous release readiness lives. I know there might be a lot of information to show, but sure, that's a good thing to take into account. Maybe for a quick take, like a short video showcasing all the new features that Flow has. Thank you, Santana, for that suggestion. We have our Hello World action deployed to the org. Now we are ready to use it on our flow. Where is our flow? Here. Let me refresh. So I have visibility of that flow. And let's add that action. So when I'm adding an action, I have access to the standard actions. Those are the different standard actions that are available on my org. Or I can have access also to the custom ones. Here we have this Hello World action that I just recently created. So I'm creating this new action. Let's give it a label. Say hello. We have an input value. The input value is the value that comes from enter your name. And the output is going to be assigned to a new variable. Let's create this variable. This is a greeting message of type text. Beautiful. I'm executing the action, I'm storing the result on a variable, and now I will be able to do something with that variable. Let's create another screen, drag a display text, insert a resource. In this case, it will be the greeted message. And let's center, bold that message, and maybe increase the font. And, okay, give it a name, greeting message. Okay, greeting screen. No, greeting message. Sorry, this is the display text that I'm having here. I have two other errors. The screen doesn't have a label. So this is the greeting. Awesome. So I'm asking for the information, I'm calling Apex, and then I'm getting the result from Apex. Let's save and debug to see if it works. Okay, enter your name. Let's use Santanu, which is the last one that wrote on the chat. Next, I'm calling Apex and I'm getting the salutation. Hello, Santano Roy. This worked. I'm able to call Apex, but using primitive values. In this case, I'm using a string as an input and a string as an output. But we can have more complex inputs and outputs for our actions. So let's create a little bit more complex example. Usually these actions are for more complex use cases. Let's say you want to perform operations over multiple objects, perform transformation of data, maybe doing an external HTTP callout. So let me show you how can you perform these operations using a custom action in Apex. Let's create a new class. And let's call it account actions or account util action. Utils action, let's say. I like that name. Okay. I will be using the account to get all the contacts and opportunities for that specific account so I can render those on a data table in my flow. So as the input, I need the account ID, which is going to be of type ID. And as the output, I will need a more complex object that will have the list of contacts and the list of opportunities for that specific account. So let's work on that. Let me create the method public static. I need to have a list of something. Get contacts and opportunities. And I need to have a list of inputs. But I don't know what type of data I'm going to use. One pattern that you can have for custom actions is to specify a request class and a result class. The request class represents the data that is coming as the input, and the result class is the data that is coming as the output. So let me create a public class. Let's say action request, and the other one is going to be an action result. So I have a list of action result, and I'm receiving a list of action request. This is a public inner class that I am creating. As the request, I told you that I need one variable, and that variable is the account ID. So this needs to be public of type ID, and let's call it action ID with only one C. And for the result, I will be returning a list of contacts and a list of opportunities. Good. So I have a list of contacts and a list of opportunities. And I have a method that fetch that information from an account ID. So let's create the method that get that information. So this is going to be private, static. It will return only one action result, right? And this is, let's call it invoke, and only get one action request as the input. Now I will be performing the logic. So I need the list of contact, and I will need the list of opportunities. Okay. And then I am creating an action result object. And I'm setting up the contacts, and I'm setting up the opportunities. And the same with the main method, I have the list of action result, and I will perform the iteration over the inputs. And I will add every object by calling the invoke on the request, and I can return the results. So far, what I have is the basic methods. Then what I need to do is perform the SQL operations to get the contacts based on that account ID. So let me, for contacts, get the ID and the name. What? Don't autocomplete. I don't need you to be autocompleting anything here. Awesome. Name from contact where account ID equals input action ID. I call it action ID. Let's change it to account ID. So I use the proper name. Beautiful. And let's add, okay, with security enforce. And I will say I just need 10 contacts. I don't need to have the full list of contacts. And the same for opportunities. Let's have the name and the amount. So I want to show the amount from opportunity, where the account ID is equals to the account ID property with security enforced, and limit that to only 10 opportunities. I'm just limiting the amount of information and returning to the flow. Performing 2 operations. You can do whatever you want here, any logic, perform calculations over data, transformation, mapping, any complex logic that you cannot do on the flow, you can do it here in Apex. And yes, what I need to do is return the result. I'm adding the values, and we are almost there, almost there. I think I have a question. From Apex, we are returning a list of strings, but in the flow, we are storing this list into a string variable. That's a very good question. When you see the action, when I am storing the variables, here I am telling you that this is just one variable that I am adding the value. But these methods are made to be executed as bulk. So pretty much what we are performing here is a bulkify operation. Internally, the flow engine will be bulkifying operations and getting those values from there. So this is why it gets the list inputs and returns the list output. But we will see in this case, when we have a list within a list, that these values here can be assigned to a collection. And we will see how in a moment. Okay. What do we need here is to expose this as an invocable method. And this is get account info. Let me add a description. Get contacts and opportunities. And another cool thing that you can add into a custom action is an icon. So you can add an icon from either the Salesforce line design system, or a static resource that you upload into your project. Let's say an SVG icon that you can add for your project. So I'm going to be using a standard icon, account info. I like this. SLDS, standard, and I add the name account info. Good. So now I exposed the method. What I need to do is expose the variables. So these classes, since I am using these classes as the output and input of my invocable method, I need to define those as invocable variable. And similar to the methods, I can specify a label. And I can say, for example, if that variable is required or not. You can take a look at the documentation for invocable variable to see the different properties you can pass to the annotation. Right now, you can pass the label, the description, and if it is required or not. And also the different rules that you will need to follow to define an invocable variable. They need to be public or global. They cannot be final. They cannot be static. They cannot be protected. So these are the considerations for an invocable variable. So now the account ID is required, and then the invocable variable. This is the list of contacts, and invocable variable is list of opportunities. I have a typo here. And this should be it. So reviewing, I have an action. It receives a list of inputs with account IDs and perform an operation to get the contacts, to get the opportunities, and create a complex result object returning those lists. So I'm ready to deploy this metadata. Let's hope everything is good. While it deploys, I'm going to drink some mate. Greetings to my friends from Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Chile, and all of South America that drinks some mate. Okay, variable does not exist, result, line 7. Okay, because it is results. Nice, I have a typo. Let me deploy. Yeah, thank you very much, Shankar. I was missing that. Beautiful. I have the account utils action. Let me go and check again if it's available on the endpoint. I'm getting the get account info action from my API. Cool. This should be working. Now let me go to the flow and use that action. So I'm going to be refreshing here so I get the latest action that I just created. And let me reuse this greeting screen and add a pick list. Select an account. This will be a text. This is required. I'm choosing this from a record choice. Account choice. Accounts choice. Okay, I'm getting the accounts. The account object. Fetch me all of the accounts. Return maximum 10. Show the name. And the value, it's going to be the ID. When I select the account, I'm going to return the ID. Beautiful. So I have accounts choice. Now, I will be able to perform my action. So let's have an action. This action, it's called accounts, get account info. Okay, get account info. Now you can see that the input value, it says account ID. It's the same from the label. Instead of just showing input and output as the first action we created, now it gives me the label that I added to my input variable, to my invocable variable. So I'm getting this from the selection. This is called accounts choice. Okay, I'm getting the account ID from accounts choice. And I am assigning the variables from the list of contacts and the list of opportunities. Okay, a lot of questions here. A lot of questions. Medic, I was wondering if you know of a way to launch a flow in a modal window. I got a method in my LWC to launch a screen flow, but it adds it to the bottom of the page rather than a modal. Medic, have you used the new Lightning web controller way of Lightning web component way of adding flows to a screen? There is a new Lightning component that allows you to add a flow with LWC. I think there is a couple of codeLives and videos that were published recently by Mohit that shows how to do that. But not exactly sure if it works on a model, but maybe give it a try. Why security enforced? I'm performing those SQL operations, making sure that the users that are running the flows have access to the data. So this is what I'm adding the security enforced to make sure the data that is returning this specific query, the user have access to it. Pancash. While we are using SQL query inside the for loop, as per my understanding, this is not the good practice. That's a very good question. The methods are going to be bulkified. They are not executed immediately. So this is the pattern that is recommended. Right now, technically it's not in the for loop. We are performing it outside. Okay, perfect. Let's continue. Let's assign the list of contacts to a new collection. So let's create a new variable. This variable, let's call contacts of type record. Allow multiple values. Since I am getting multiple values, this is a list. I check this box. And then this is of type contact. So I know all the records here are of type contact. And then let's create a new resource here, also a variable. And this is opportunities of type record. It allows multiple. And the object is opportunity. So I'm executing the action. I'm assigning the values to variables that I can use on my next screen. And you can see here that the icon is the one I selected on the Apex class. So when you design your own flows with your own custom actions, you can use those actions to specify visually what that action does. Instead of having the standard Apex icon, here it's giving the user a little bit more information visually of that custom action. Last but not least, we want to use that information. So let's create a last screen. In this screen, I will drop a section. This section is going to be 2 columns. One column will have a data table. The other one, another data table. This data table, it's called contacts. Contacts table. The collection is going to be the contacts. And now let me configure the columns. I am putting just the name. So now I have the full name as the first column here for the contacts. And now for the opportunities, let me opportunities table, opportunities. Okay, perfect. And let me, the data source is going to be the opportunities. And for the columns, I will have the name of the opportunity as the first one. And another column here is going to be the amount. Is the other data that we are fetching. So now I will be showing the information here that I fetch from the screen and maybe a display text with the account name. No, let's not bother us with that. Cool. And this is the contacts and opportunities screen, and we should be good to go. The only thing that we need is data. So let me add some data to my org. Let's go to sales. Okay, maybe so then yes, but it is always a good practice to add that security enforce on SQL queries from Apex. It's even the tooling we use to check and analyze the Apex, it will tell you that you are missing that. So it's always a good practice to add it. Now, with user mode support, it's way better the control that you have over what the user can see or what the user can execute. Patel, hey Merrick, you can use Aura component and use SLDS model. Inside the SLDS model, use the flow tag. Okay. And Ravani, it is good practice if I create multiple flows on single object instead of two flow before and after save flows. And is there drawback if create multiple flows in a single object? Can you explain that question a little bit more? Awesome. Cool. I will be continuing with this. Let me create an account because I think I only have one. So I'm going to create an account. My account is codeLive. And let me add some contacts to that account. I will add Santanu Roy. Santanu is one contact. I will add another contact from the chat. Patel. Nilkant. I need to take a closer look at the chat. Let's hope I don't misspell your name. And I will add Ike as another contact. And opportunities. My opportunities are going to be teaching LWC. And let's add a value. This is prospecting, a close date. Let's add it to the future. And let me add another opportunity, invoking custom flows. It's another opportunity we have today. And this has a good value. And pretty much this is closed won, because I hope all of us learned how to do this. Now that we have data, let me debug. Let me see if this works. Let's hope. Enter your name. My name is Julian. Hello, Julian Duque. Select an account. I'm selecting codeLive. Next, I'm getting the custom actions. So I'm getting the contacts and I'm getting the opportunities from Apex. Awesome. So this is working. Last but not least, another cool thing that you can do with custom actions is performing HTTP callouts. We are adding a new action, but it's currently in beta, which is create an HTTP callout from Flow. So directly, if you click here, you will be able to perform an HTTP API call from Flow, but as of today, it only supports a get operation. What if you need to perform a post or a delete or another complex operation? So let's keep using custom actions. But in the future, when this feature is fully released, we will be supporting all of those methods. But today, we need to have a way to do it, and that way is custom actions. We will be using a service called mockbean to create a basic API. So let's create an API here. And this API will return, hello codeLive folks. Let's learn some flow. So this is our API. If I call this API, this is the thing it will return. Let's create the bean, and now I will be able to perform API requests to this specific route. So in order to perform the API request from Apex, we will need to create a name credential. So let's go on setup. Let's create a named credential. Since this doesn't have OAuth or authentication, I'm going to be creating a legacy one. Let's call it mogbean, and this is the URL. Save it. So now I can use this name credential from Apex. And quickly, because I have like 8 minutes, let's create a new custom action. Let's create a new Apex class, HTTP post action. And quickly, this will be public static. This will be returning a string, do post, and this will be getting a input as a string. Perfect. And public static invoke. It will be getting the input. Fantastic. And let me create the HTTP request. I need to have a HTTP request to perform the callout. And now the request first, let me set up the endpoint. Set endpoint. Why I'm having an issue here? Okay. The endpoint is going to be callout mogbean / this route. This is the route I will be calling. And then set method. This is going to be a post. Set. Oh, I need to return something here. So it will be a string. Then set body. The body is the input. And let's set a header. The header of my request is content type text plain. And my request is sent. And then I'm getting the response from here. So let me get the response. HTTP response res, and then return the body. So this is what it does. Then I perform the bulkify operation, getting a string from inputs, and I will be creating the list of outputs, results. Beautiful. And let me do add the results. Let's call in that HTTP API, passing the input, returning the results. 5 minutes, almost there. And I need an invocable method. And this is called do post callout, HTTP post callout. I think this can be private. I think this is good. Okay, Santano, I will upload this code example to GitHub as well. Cool. Oh, nice, Ike. See you at Trailblazer DX. I will be at the Customer 360 area. I will be speaking about Heroku. I will be interviewing folks. So yes, I will be there at TDX. Make sure to go and say hi if you see me there. Please, please, please. I will love it. It's time to deploy. Let me see if this works. live coding, everything can fail, but this deploy. Let me see if I have it here from the API. I have it. Fantastic. Now let me go to the flow. Where are you, flow? And add the action. Post, do post callout, do post. The input, let's get it from the context table. Let's get a name from the context table just to send data to the API. And the output, let's assign it to a new variable. Output from HTTP, and this is going to be a text. And last but not least, another screen to print that output. And this is the output from HTTP. Output HTTP. Okay, and let's bold, let's big center, and let's make it red for dramatic purposes. Fix some errors and result from HTTP. And there we go. We have 3 different actions, one with just a hello world, one with the account information, and the other with a post. But I missed something. Since we are performing external callouts, I need to pass the callout true property. This property is documented on the invocable method documentation. You can see if you perform a call to an external system, enable callout equals true. You can also add a category, or if you have like custom configurator, you can also pass that information, but I'm not covering that because I'm running out of time. Let's deploy again because I added the new callout property. This is performing an external callout to a third-party system. Let's see if it works. Awesome. Let me go to Mockbean, view history. Right now, I have not received any request, but we will test and see if it works. Let me debug this flow. And Sarah, hello Sarah. Select an account, it will be codeLive. And Santanu, you are going to be the first selected one that we will send to the HTTP API. This message, remember, comes from HTTP. Hello codeLive folks, let's learn some flow. If I go to Mockbean and I refresh, I am getting a post request with a request body, which is Santanu Roy. And it worked. Fantastic, it worked. Let me see what we have in the chat. Why didn't you add callout true for the invoke method? Because you add callout true to the invocable method annotation. This is not an invocable method. This is just a private method that I'm using to perform the callout. So you add the callout true to the invocable method. Okay? Awesome. That was pretty much what I had for you all today. Let me know if you like this content, if you want to learn more. We will be sharing all of the resources on the description of this video once it gets released, the documentation for the invocable method, the invocable variable, and I will be uploading also this source code with the already created flow to GitHub. Thank you very much for joining us on codeLive. See you next week. Remember, we will be seeing asynchronous JavaScript, promises, callbacks, async await, events, everything on LWC. And in the future, we will continue learning more about Apex, Flow, Lightning Web Components, MuleSoft, Slack. So let us know what you want to learn. Give us a comment in the chat. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, and engage with us on Twitter. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.